can say something very quickly and I'll pass the mic on. I think it's through storytelling. And by that I mean not making stuff up. Great storytelling. My business, think about my career. My career is figuring out 15 ways to sell tires. Like, I work with McDonald's, Wendy's, Tim Hortons. They're all selling essentially the same product. But our task is to tell their compelling story in a different way, even though really they're all in the same category. So that's just a small example of how, with great storytelling, great compelling storytelling, you can make something that looks like a commodity or a parody, P-A-R-I-T-Y, not parody, parody product, your own, and exciting and fantastic. So it is absolutely doable, absolutely.
I need to build a little bit on where you started with the questioning, and I appreciate you going right into the narrative response. When I have the opportunity, again, as a representative here, when I can talk to people and tell them my story, they are forced to look at us completely differently. When I had the opportunity over the fall to meet with some senators that came in from the United States, part of their energy committee, first thing I did was tell them about the children that I'm raising here. If I could flash a picture of my 1-year-old, I would do that in any audience, because the first thing any parent will tell you is they'll never put their children at risk. So why would you think I'd raise them in an environment such as what you perceive it to be? And so dispelling with the anecdote is helpful when you have that one-on-one engaged audience. What I find difficult in trying to combat those images is when you take a word like tar sands that has been coined by heavy environmental criticism or whatever to differentiate the oil sands, which is what we're trying to perpetuate as positive. I appreciate you making that effort, but I sit here and I shake my head. I say, my goodness, when I worked in the oil industry myself, we referred to it as the tar sands back then. I know factually it's not accurate, and that's why we started making our change. But if it didn't hurt us back then, why do we allow it to hurt us now? And so I think when we react as concertedly against something, we empower that thing. And whether it's an image of oil ducks, that one image is going to wipe out virtually any opportunity that we have for telling our story, because an image is worth 1,000 words. So I need the picture that's Fort McMurray. It's not that 1-year-old, it's the people. Again, I keep coming back to who's here, why they're here, and what are they achieving. And I don't know how to do that other than the story format that Terry's talking about.
It's a really interesting question to me, and the fact that I think it ties together so many of the discussions we've had all day, but more importantly up here is, I think it was referred to as the nugget. I mean, if you want to change your strengths, a city is no different than a hamburger or tires or anything else. It's a product that you need to sell. You just have to understand how you're going to market it, I think. And so if our strengths are the same as Toronto's, well, what are the nuggets in there that provide our competitive advantage? And I think, as Mayor Blake said, and I think as Terry spoke to, once we find that nugget in those strengths, we need to stick to them. So that when external marketing providers come back and they say, it was tar sands, or they reference a duck and it provides a negative connotation, well, you know what? The strength is there in how we convey that message. Probably the best example that I can give of that is had a really unique opportunity from the recreation point of view with Vancouver 2010, with the Olympics out there. And if you look at the start that they had to any Olympics, it was probably as bad as it could be. And the CEO of the Olympics was speaking at a rec conference, and a really candid gentleman, and he said, I remember going back after we had the gentleman that was killed, we had the opening ceremonies, the failures of the instruments there. He said, and it was absolute frenzy, and the weather. And he said, for 10 years we have had a plan that has emphasized our strengths, and if we move from that plan, we will be unsuccessful. And then he contrasted to the last day of the Olympics. Team Canada, playing the Americans, and he's sitting there with the CEO for the games in Russia, and he says, wouldn't this be great if this goes into overtime? And he said, do you realize you're in Canada? But he said, the game goes into overtime. He said he had this one moment where he said, we just went from being the worst Olympics in the history of the world to being the best Olympics in the history of the world. The product is the same in every single country, but the goal and the nuggets that they stuck to, even in times of adversity, allowed them to be successful. So I'd suggest if we can find those nuggets and we can put them on a billboard and say we're never going to move away from them. 30 years I love New York, we have an opportunity to be successful.
round table here. It is. I would just emphasize I think the points that were made earlier. Our experience is certainly, again, on the positive side of things. Is you cannot win a battle on other people's terms, and you need to go to talk about your strengths, the nugget. And for us, we think our nugget is our people and our technology. And that's what the story that Canadian Association of Petroleum Producers has told through our advertising campaign over the past year. And it is based in research. We found a number of things that surprised us in that research. It was very objective. And we found out that actually, while we worry about energy and oil sands all day, most Canadians actually don't. So we had actually a huge opportunity to make an impression, which I think was the most positive thing that we learned. And now that we've had that opportunity and taken the effort and made the investment, we have made an impression in the right direction, we feel, with the right people. So I think the meter in general is going in the right direction. You can never underestimate people's, maybe the headlines don't focus on the good news stories, but certainly people want to see the good news stories because that's what connects us all as people.
And I have to comment on that too, because I think it's very interesting that you used, for example, Toronto in your discussion, because I travel throughout this country, as I know you do, Terry, and there's a lot of people in Canada who have a very negative impression of Toronto. And when I'm in Toronto, there's a lot of people who have a very negative impression of Alberta. And I appreciate especially what you said, Mayor, is that let's not buy into that. Let's not buy into that cynicism. And when we were talking today, and I was pulling together some notes just to summarize how the day went, the one thing that I saw or heard that was a threat when we did our little SWOT analysis, the only real threat I saw and the only real threat I heard was the use of the word cynicism. And I think the cynicism within within this area and external. I think I'd love to hear the panel's perception on that. How do we get away from that sort of Canadian inferiority complex or negativity or cynicism? What do you think we should do to get over that?